Okay, so this is my 2007 Boulevard M109R. When I got it, I wanted to do a ride, and I saw a video. I will try to show what video it was, of a guy who used a Harley air ride off of Amazon, and it worked out pretty well. However, a couple things that I learned on using that air ride. It was a bit of a cheaper setup, and so a couple of things that didn't work on the M109 is they have bushings on both sides. One, the rubber isn't super hard, and so it was not up for the task of the weight of a single shock bike like this in the rear. And with the way the multi-link twists, you actually have to have a bearing on one side. I had to do that on anything that I've tried on this thing. And the idea was air ride is smoother. You can drop it down when you park. It looks cool. So I was really kind of hoping for a good mix between comfort and style. I loved how it looked good when I dropped it all the way down and I parked. I honestly enjoyed the way it rode. However, with that kit, the gentleman that I saw the video on that I got the idea from, he also put 2-inch drop links on it. And I tried that too, and what it did is those ones had an issue with, as the shock compressed, I got a different one right here, as the shock compresses, this is the airbag actually goes inside of here. And with the way the first cheaper design was, the airbag would start to go in here and kind of start to bind up. So I wouldn't always go down some of the time. And so what I did is I did the drop links, and what that did is it made it so it didn't compress as far. However, when I had a failure of that design, the airbag right here just had a clamp. This is not the one that failed. Those were different ones. It had a clamp to hold the airbag. And when I was fully loaded, I've got some big side bags I have on this one. The bags are fully loaded. It was me and my wife riding down the freeway. One, the bag did not have enough pressure to pick it up all the way. The air compressor that I have on the bike wasn't quite enough to pick up all the way. So what had happened is I was going down the road and I heard a big boom, tail dropped all the way down till my tire was rubbing on the fender, and I ended up thankfully getting to the side safely. And so that was a failure of that design. I'll show a picture of somebody else's that had the same problem. I've cut mine apart, so it's not a good reference anymore. So then next I tried this shock. It was a little more expensive. Hopefully more money means better quality. And these do look like better quality. However, again, these are for like a 2-shock bike where it sits on the outside right here on like a Harley or something. And the issue we have with that is because this is a single shock, the dampening is much higher than this. So this, when I had it on, it pretty much had 0 dampening. So the whole thing would just be going like this, moving way too far going down the road. I tried a couple things to make it work. However, one, it didn't have enough air volume to really lift up the bike with anything more than just myself. So I gave that a try, but in the end, still wasn't quite what I was looking for. So on today's task, I wanted to go softer as well as adjustable dampening. the dampening on the stock shock, which is on here right now, I will get to that later, and the spring rate is so hard and so stiff that when you have a 160-pound guy like me on this thing, it actually rides pretty harsh. And I'm wearing a hoodie because it's freezing in here. It rides pretty harsh, and that's part of why I want to go with the air ride. So the experiment for today is I have this QA1 shock, which is primarily designed for a car. However, the benefit to this is just about infinite spring rate. So I'm going to try this one. I'll get to that in a moment. But the bigger benefit is I have shock dampening adjustment on this. So if it's just me, I can have this nice and loose, and it should, you know, run over the bumps nice and smooth. If I'm fully loaded with my wife on board as well, I could bump this up. If I'm cruising down the road or the freeway, I could have it pretty soft. If I decide I want to go on twisties, I can bump it up, so that way if I'm turning real good, if I hit a bump, I'm not gonna just bottom out and scrape and crash. Okay, so that's what I'm gonna try on this one. I ordered a 14-inch, which is longer than the original. The original shock, I think, is like a 13-inch shock. So the reason why I went with a 14 is to try to get a little more suspension travel. We'll see if that works out or not. I'm going to be testing that as I put this on. I won't get too much into putting the shock on and all that. The other reason why I went with 14 is it has enough room where it's not going to interfere with the tire. It's longer than stock, so what I'm going to do is try this with a 2-inch drop link kit, and we'll see what that ends up looking like. Like I say, I still have to try this out. I will update you and compare each one, showing you how soft the dampening is on the airbag, the stock one, and then this. So the other thing, looking on a forum, some guys that had their shock spring tested as far as how stiff it is. It is an extremely stiff spring. So the forum that I saw said it was 900-pound spring, which means 900 pounds would move it 1 inch. And so you really think about 160-pound guy does not move that very far. So here I have a little bit lighter. I'm going to try a 750, and we'll see how it is. It might be perfect. It might be too soft, depending on if I'm riding solo or if I'm riding fully loaded. We'll see. So this is going to be the task for today. So I will set this stuff. Oh yeah, and if you do end up just using a rubber bushing on the shock, so the front mount of the shock, the top, it doesn't twist much. So rubber's there, rubber's fine there. However, the rear is really where you need the bearing, because the arm twists so much and it just starts to shred bushings like that. So you can't really see it very well, but rubber's not designed to be twisted that much. So without further ado, we'll drop those off to the side and we'll do a comparison. So I'll sit on this thing, show you if I jump on it how far it moves, which is not much, and we will go from there. So again, right now suspension's completely stock. I'm a 160-pound guy, and if I sit on it, it moves maybe ½ an inch. If I jump on it, it does barely move more than that. Probably not even 1 inch. So when you're going down the road, that is not a lot of suspension travel if you're talking 1 inch of movement. So without further ado, I won't go into the whole taking the shocks apart or taking the suspension apart, because there's plenty of videos out there going over that, I'm sure. and it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. So I am now going to work on that, and I'll bring you back up to speed when I get the air ride that I was using on here, and I will show you what goes on with that. So be right back. Okay, so I mocked up the air ride that I have on it, still the air compressor and all that on it. So I love how when you park, you can drop it all the way down. Love the look. So I'll show you kind of what I was struggling with on this current airbag and the air ride that I had tried so far. Now keep in mind, these were not air rides that were designed for the M109. They were designed for Harleys that I was trying to make work. So I'm sure if you go with the M109 kit, it probably would come out a little better. But they're what, $1,200 plus bucks for a rear air ride by itself. So I was kind of like, I couldn't quite justify that. So I will show you kind of what this airbag was doing for me. So I'll fill it up here. Okay, so we'll say this is about the height of the original spring. Now, I like how much it moves. Well, I should say settles when I sit on it. However, you probably already saw that. The dampening is nowhere near right, because it's, if I just drop on it, it's just way too bouncy. It does not work to ride with it that bouncy. So that was the problem I was having with this air ride. The original kit that I tried was better, it was tolerable, but the other problem is you'd seen it took quite a while for it to air out. But yeah, it's just, this is not even usable. So that was the main flaw to the kit that I had on it. So that's why I pulled this one off, and that's why I'm still experimenting. Now, I have not put that on, so it'll be learning, and we'll see how that goes. But we'll go from there, and so be back in a bit after I do all my test fitting and all that for the QA1 one. So, right back. Alright, so here's the stock one, we got that out. And I went ahead and got the new one, the adjustable coilover, installed. Now, I will try this out, see what I think. Already I can tell you it's definitely softer than this spring right here. I mean, I can actually move it. And having the ability to adjust the dampener depending on either, you know, what kind of riding I'm doing. If I'm around twisties, I might have it bumped up a little more. If I'm just straight cruising down the highway, I probably have it loosened up a little bit, absorb the bumps a little bit nicer. You can't do that with the stock ones. And, you know, so a couple things that I would do differently. I went for a 14-inch shock, trying to get travel, which kind of bit me in the butt a little bit. Stock, I believe, is a 13-inch shock. And so a couple things that I had trouble with. I don't know if I would recommend a QA1 coilover specifically for anybody trying to do something like this. A couple of problems I had. The collar right here's a little bit bigger on the QA1, and the distance between the bolt and the body was not quite enough. So I actually had to shave down some of the mount right here, so that way I could get a bolt through there. So that was one hurdle I had to work past. The other one, because of the suspension design I had and a longer shock, that kind of bit me in the butt, because one, I had to do drop links, which I already had, which was not a problem. But I would say probably would want to do something like a 13. You probably can get away with a 12-inch shock, because what I found is even without the drop knuckles or drop links, the shock I have would actually the tire would bottom out in the fender before that shock would even get all the way down. However, if I have trouble with that, I can always pull it apart and put a bump stop on the shaft itself, so I would actually have a bump stop before I run the tire into the fender. So I was trying to do that, but didn't really need to. I had to put the drop links on it, but the other problem I was having, the coilover that I have in there is a little bit bigger diameter, quite a bit. I don't remember the exact size, but what I was also having problems with is I think the distance between the spring and the bolt, the mounting bolt back here, was not quite as much, and with the larger diameter I was having trouble with the linkage coming up, and I couldn't quite get it all the way in there. So I had to do some shaving and stuff on that link to even be able to get it fit. It's not ideal, however, I'm okay with it. I trust it. But if you went maybe with a different company or different brand, maybe you'd have a little bit extra room here, and if you went with a smaller diameter, if you could, that would also help with the link clearance on the back. Otherwise, if you went with, because mine was a 14-inch, that link is turned more. So if you had a 13, that would probably be just fine. So yeah, we'll give it a try. The other thing is, if you do get some kind of coilover, again, the front side, which is the side this is on, a bushing or any kind of, harder polyurethane or something like that is fine up here. However, back here, as the suspension moves, it's got a link that twists probably about that much, depending on how much it goes through. So you're gonna have to, you can find something like this at like a, probably even a Home Depot or something like that, but a hardware store. This is just a generic bushing. I didn't have a problem with what I had. You can usually find stuff that, would work in this. I had to slightly make this smaller. So I just cut it, made it smaller, welded it back up. That's what I was able to do whenever I was messing with these things. The stock one already has a bearing in on that side. So that's when I realized, oh yeah, I probably need that. So we'll give this QA1 a chance. I've only done short little test drives. Again, spring rate on this one is 750. I would say it's gonna work out great for what I need, which is sometimes solo, sometimes loaded with a passenger. I have that extra headroom, and right now I have as little preload as possible, which is how much pressure the spring is under without the shock actually being at full extension. Right now I pretty much have it as low as possible, and I'll show you that in a minute. And I have like 3 inches of, at least 2 inches of threads on this shock. So if I ever felt like, oh, I need a little more spring rate, or it's sagging too much when I'm fully loaded, all I'd have to do is take my my wrench for it and just start cranking it down and moving how much preload I have on it. So if I ever had a problem with it sagging too much, which, I mean, with the drop link, I am sitting a little bit lower. So I have that adjustability at the spring rate. If you were to go as a just solo, and that's all you ever plan on doing, you could probably even go lighter than the 750. But for what I'm doing, I think this spring rate's pretty good. Right now, I will still be tinkering with the shock dampening to see, what feels the best. Right now, I've still got it fairly loose. But I mean, it moves quite a bit. It moves quite a bit more than it did before. So yeah, so far I'm happy with it. We'll see what happens. If I make any changes, I will try to make a video on it. But that's going from a 900 spring rate to a 750. Definitely improvement. And having the shock adjustment will be a big improvement as well, because I do plan on taking this on trips. So that's all I got for right now, and I hope you guys have a good day.